What's going on, you loyal listeners? Thank you for tuning in to the L Squared podcast. I'm your host here, Luke Larson, and joining me today, as per the usual, my lovely and loquacious special guest will be assisting me in leisurely launching into levity, Old Legs.
What's going on, buddy?
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
The bad boys, we're back.
We are back. We're doing a little deep dive today. We got a little smorgasbord of spooky things today to bring the audience. So I'm excited, man. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, we got a spooky ooky buffet here. We're not giving you just a single dose. We're not giving you a double dose. We got I don't even know how many. We're doing the Conjurverse.
Yep.
L Squared edition. So Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It came out last weekend. And Old Legs and I went, we went our separate ways. We had a conversation and a conjuversation, if you will. And just realized that we've seen most of these movies, and I don't think we've talked about any of them on the show. And so what better time than now to dive into this conjuversation?
You gonna keep doing that?
Yeah. That could be our next shirt. That seems like a winner. I think people would like it.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it'll grow on me here.
Yeah, maybe say it 15 more times and then I'll make up my mind.
I don't know. It's either gonna work or it's stop trying to make fetch work, Gretchen.
So what's the Conjuring came out in 2013. I feel like this was a movie that is kind of, I feel like it's in the lore of our backstory. It was back in the squirrel feed days, that epic summer. It's the summer of 2013, and I think it was the summer anyway. And this horror film came out. It's a new horror movie, and we went to see it. I don't think we saw it together, but I remember talking to you about it.
Yep.
And you being like, was it good? And I'm like, yeah, it was really good. It was just sort of like your classic horror movie and you were like, oh, so it didn't really reinvent the wheel, but just like gave you a really good horror movie. And it was like, yeah, you summed it up right there. And so since then, I feel like The Conjuring it's felt like it sort of set the standard for 2010s horror, kind of set the template of it with the feel and the atmosphere and James Wan's directing. But do you remember when you saw it?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this. I saw it alone in a movie theater.
Perfect.
So 2013, The Conjuring comes out, the first one, and I feel like this does a lot of sort of setting up the next sort of wave of horror films that would come to follow. Obviously, you said the director, James Wan. This sort of, in my opinion, establishes him as like a legitimate like film director. He had previously done Insidious, Saw, obviously, was the big one that he kind of jumped on the scene with. But this movie scared the shit out of me, and it's interesting because I think it sort of paves the way for a lot of horror films that we see now more today, where you can make these films on you can make them on a pretty decent budget and make a ton of money, and if the right people are working on it, so it sort of breaks the mold of let's just try and make something scary,
Yeah.
Instead of like, let's make a really good film. and let's get all the details right. Because I mean, this film, like I was thinking about it, there's not like I wouldn't say that the big evil, the big bad, is like incredibly iconic. Like I couldn't remember it going in, like what it actually
Mm-hmm.
was, and you know I probably don't remember now, even having seen it, you know, a week ago. But it's just this movie is all vibes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's spooky, and it hits all the notes perfectly, and I love it.
Yeah, it does. That's a great millennial term for all, so that we all understand. Great vibes, and it does really like rely on a lot of what we in the biz call, you know, atmospheric horror, and it builds tension by having this great setting. And it's, is it a slow burn, or is it just more like carefully put together? And it is
Both,
just
I
more
would say.
about um it's more about the feelings and the family, and it's not about like you said, like I was thinking of, um you know, because in the 2000s, like we talked about on our on the infamous top 10 horror movies of the 2000s episode, that there just weren't a lot of premiere horror films in the 2000s, and a lot of them, we were kind of coming out of the age of the rebirth of the slasher with Scream. And so it's kind of like the 2000s were trying to find their footing. Um and while I love Freddy vs. Jason, that was like a horror movie that would come out in the 2000s, just like a big bad that you know of. It's teenagers being dumb, and they get killed, and who cares, you know? Or it's like there's a lot of that kind of just generic shit. And then, um, you know, James Wan comes along with Saw, which was different, but then like his 1-2 punch of Insidious and then The Conjuring, like you said, where The Conjuring was like, okay, that's like the new bar for modern horror, and we're gonna go up from there. And it wasn't predicated on, there aren't like a lot of false jump scares. There isn't a lot of just loud, weird noises like a zing when somebody's behind you. You know, it's, there's a lot of long, really cool shots. And it is really more about just an overall creepy feeling throughout.
Yeah, I agree. It's the all of the premises, all of the tropes are things that we've just seen before, but again, I mean, when it's done well, and I was thinking about it when I was watching both this and Conjuring 2, there are so many moving parts with these films that it's really impressive that they do end up pulling it off. Like the final sequence of The Conjuring is this like there's people all over the house. You have one person
Mm,
looking for a kid. You have an exorcism going on in the basement. You have another
bang.
kid out in the car, and it's just like this like panic that's going on. And I feel like in like the wrong hands, like it would just be like, okay, why aren't we not focused here? But you really, it really does work well. And in the end, it's pretty iconic. Again, like, uh, I mean, we'll talk a lot about Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as we kind of get through this, but
Mm-hmm.
their performances and then just the overall mood, I think really sets up well for original horror films that are not based off existing IP, that are done well, that uh, would lead to, you know, the Blumhouse era, and then into I think what we're now in the kind of the art house, where it's taken it to another level where it's very very, you know, movie director centric, right? Instead of these horror films being based on like a Freddy Krueger or a Jason Voorhees, it's like a, this is an Ari Aster film, right?
Yeah.
Which is different, but yeah. So yeah, I loved Conjuring One, and I think I gave this a. So I was going through these films, and I gave this a 7 out of 10. We should probably get out of the house rating.
Hmm.
after all the pictures fall down off the wall and getting shoved by a demonic presence
Hmm.
into the basement. I was thinking like, okay, that's not the worst I've seen, but
But for
yeah,
you personally,
right, yeah.
that's a
I
hard
have seen
out.
fall off the walls all the time here, so
Yeah,
I'm used
that's
to that.
nothing new.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm still here,
Yeah.
so
They haven't got you out yet. Okay.
yeah.
And so then the next one, if we're going chronologically here, I think took a little bit of a step back. It was the spin-off called Annabelle, which came out the next year in 2014. And in The Conjuring, the opening scene with the Annabelle doll is like just a perfect like little encapsulation. It was scary. It's like that's exactly what you want. I mean, dolls are spooky anyway, but The Conjuring just set it up well and people loved it, and so they were like, we got to bank in on this. Let's do it. Let's shit out another movie here. So they just very quickly made Annabelle, focusing on the doll that was in there. Um, and I gotta say, I don't like this movie. I just didn't. I didn't care for it. It was just. It. Like I said, it's a little bit of a step back, especially like it feels like there's a big difference between The Conjuring and Annabelle.
Right. Do you want to? Should we do just the Annabelle movies here and
Okay,
just them out because if we jump back and forth too much, I don't know. I'm totally fine talking about all three of these movies kind of as a whole.
let's do it.
Because yeah, the first Annabelle movie, I think I saw this in theaters because I was like kind of excited about it,
Mm,
and it's like a Conjuring, verse. I knew that it was different director, different stars, but
hmm.
um, yeah, I the issue with this movie is that, and maybe like the whole thing in general is I can't get super excited about the doll. It's a different, there's been haunted dolls in the past.
Yeah,
Uh, the Annabelle doll is one that doesn't like pick up a butcher knife and stab you in the neck,
sure.
uh, per se, like Chucky or something like that. So I just, at the whole premise, I'm not like hugely scared of, but I do think that there is some fun to be had here within
Mm.
the series. What's your favorite Annabelle movie, Luke?
So the definitely not the first one. And I saw the I don't for sure saw the second one in theaters, and I surprisingly really liked it. That was like back to basics. It was a prequel of the creation of Annabelle, and it was a lot moodier. It was a lot slower. It was like a period piece, and it was just overall creepy, which I really liked. But this weekend, I hadn't seen the third Annabelle, and I just watched it, and I gotta say, like, I was like, that's super fun. It was like that's a good premise. That's a fun Annabelle movie. Like we're at the Warrens' place, Annabelle gets out, and all hell breaks loose with these dumb babysitter kids because the Warrens left because obviously they would never let that happen. And you get some stuff with like the daughter having to step up and like kind of face some of this stuff, and it was super fun. So like I think probably the best movie was the second one, but I don't know if I'll ever like watch it again. It's not one that I'm like, oh man, I gotta see that again. But
Fair
Annabelle
enough.
Comes Home was super fun.
Yeah, I have to agree here. I would say that Come Home is my favorite of the three. I'm not as high on the second one. I just sort of, again, it's like it's one of those. It does kind of bring it full circle, which is kind of fun. Where you kind of like, oh, this is the girl, and she came all the way back to the first movie. Because obviously everything's a universe now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, as just if it's not going to be super scary, which I don't think it's hard to do those films like that. Uh, Making it more fun, I think, is sort of the right move, and this
Mm.
definitely does that. You bring in like the teenager thing. Um, it's one of those interesting things though that I was thinking about where so since these movies are sort of, I want to say, lightly based in reality, obviously, Ed and Lorraine Warren were real people, and they had all these paranormal cases that they investigated over the years. You start to run into this thing where there can't necessarily be like a huge body count, you know, in these movies, because I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, Annabelle Comes Home. This would be like a fun, just teen slasher, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it it's sort of, you run into this wall where it's like, okay, if five teenagers who are babysitting and get up to debauchery get
Mhm.
slaughtered in the Warrens' house, like there has to be like real life ramifications if you're actually going to like consider this a universe. So you start to run into this thing where it's like, oh well, can anything really happen to
Mm.
these people, right?
Yeah.
And that was another thing I noticed just with like the Conjuring proper movies. In the first two films, there's a body count of 0,
Wow.
which I think is really interesting when you think about kind of iconic horror films. Um, and again, horror films, the first two Conjuring movies, and maybe even the third as well, that don't necessarily have like the iconic villain or um, big evil there to kind
Yeah.
of prop up the film. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Those are a lot of great points you brought up, but I agree, and it sort of works with Comes Home with Annabelle, like that, like you said, like there can't really be a big body count, and when you have teenagers, like they can't really. But it was enough that it's like, okay, if you were a teenager and you were babysitting for the Warrens, and you know that they have spooky stuff there, and like this stuff went on, that would be scary. That would be enough scares for you as a teenager,
Right.
even if you're not getting slaughtered. Um, and yeah, that it was surprisingly super fun. But I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of I don't know. Sometimes like dolls are creepy. Like I don't dolls are just creepy to me anyway. But I don't know. I think they're creepier more than they're scary. To your point, for me, like it's just a little uneasy. Not necessarily like, okay, I think it's gonna go like you said, get a butcher knife or like because at the end of the day, it's a doll. So it's like, how scared are you when it's like I can just walk over to it and just like throw it away or whatever.
Right.
But James Wan did direct a horror movie about dolls that I love in the 2000s that made my top 10 horror films of the 2000s called Dead Silence. Um, and that's actually really good. It's like, it's fun and it's kind of dumb, but that was another super fun, scary doll movie. So it can be
I
done.
still haven't seen that. I still have this like aversion to 2010s horror films after watching all those. I
Yeah.
mean, it's we litigated it. For me, it's The Descent is one, and then uh, 2 and 3 are left blank out of respect.
Yeah.
But we don't need to get
No.
hashed again. But
No.
yeah, I don't know. Do you think? Do you think we see another Annabelle film? I mean, there's not necessarily like a sort of show-stopping like big item that they could just like mine, unless they just make something up like another
Right.
big from the Warren treasure trove of spooky
Yeah.
objects. Um,
Right. Yeah, like Annabelle like starts it off by releasing one of the scary objects and then that goes off and does its own thing. I don't
yeah,
know. I don't re- That's a good point. I don't really think so cuz I think we kind of have it where the first one can just that's like that was the Annabelle terror how we got introduced. The second one was the prequel, how the doll got made and everything like okay. And then the third one is, you know, what happens when that doll gets out at the Warrens' house, which they, had said it happened. So, I mean, to me, that seems like the only three things that you could do with that story, like you said, unless like, I don't know, the Warrens have a garage sale at some point and a family buys it and then that's now in their home and we just start over, I don't know. I guess you could do something like that. But before we jump back into the Conjuring propers, there are a couple other movies in this universe, The Nun and The Curse of La Llorona. So I've seen both. Did you see either of these?
I've seen The Nun. I did
Okay.
not. I forgot about Curse of La Llorona. Yeah.
So I thought The Nun sucked. I didn't like it. I don't remember anything about it. I saw it like a year ago. I think don't they go to some other country and there's like a old monastery there and it's haunted by a nun. That's about as much as I remember.
Yeah, so this movie, this is sort of what happens when you try and make something, uh, you try and make like The Witch without like a real commitment to the time period, uh, where it's just sort of like, well, let's just have a bunch of British people, and like if they're not British, let's have them do a British accent, and
Because that's old timey.
yeah, sort of like it's so hard to place. There's it, you're not really like drawn into the world at all.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're going to do something where it's this thing that's stuck in this time period, uh, I think as far as like sort of spooky things or villains go, like the Nun is spooky, uh, and it's better than Annabelle, I would say, as far as just like a big bad. But
Yeah.
I could have done without this,
Yeah.
very much so. I sort of feel like this is kind of just people cashing checks at this point.
Big time.
Uh, Tesa Farmiga is sort of like kind of the lead.
That's right. Her actual daughter. That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
I just sort of feel like it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? Let's get them checks, man. Like,
Right.
fire it up.
Whatever. Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah, no, that's right. I remember that. Yeah, that's a good point you bring up. They did not commit to it. And it sucks, which The Nun, to your point, is maybe like the closest thing to a big bad the Conjuring verse has, because
Sure.
it does show up a couple times. And so that puts a little bit of pressure on when you're like, all right, we're gonna do a whole movie just about this. Like they kind of have to carry it. And yeah, when you're just cashing checks, it's like, well. Plus, like Insidious has like a creepy old lady storyline too that's kind of runs through it. So it's like you're kind of crossing streams here at that point. The Curse of La Llorona, I didn't think was that great. It was okay. They did so the La Llorona is a demon that snatches up little kids or whatever, and
I haven't seen that before.
right, yeah, it was. When I watched it, I thought, okay, it's like blatant either like homage of James Wan or like really just trying to like cop his style. Which I guess I'm sure he's a producer on all these, but like the opening shot of it is this, stop me, you've heard this before, a long unbroken shot of a family moving into a new home. Does that sound like the opening scene to any of the other movies we've talked about yet?
Right.
Very iconic, and it was just done way worse, obviously. Like it wasn't bad, but it was, to me, I'm like, okay, like this is just, you're just trying to do the thing. And then there's a scene where the daughter is like washing her hair in the tub, little girl, and the mom was in there like holding her hair or something, and then she would say rinsing, and then like her mom would hold her hair while she went underwater. And then there's a whole part where they build that up. That was in the trailer a lot, but they build it up, and then the mom isn't there, and she says rinsing, and there's these creepy ghost hands of La Llorona holding her hair instead of her mom, and she goes under, and you're like, ooh, that's spooky. But it's like that's the same as like hide and clap, like, oh, we're playing hide and clap. Where's the the person's in here? Oh wait, it's a ghost. Like it's the same exact thing. So it was just kind of annoying to me to watch him try and try and redo a couple of things and then just have it be just kind of a boring movie overall. And it was like, there's a jaded detective storyline where, it's like he wants to be with her or something, and she's also a cop. And so it's like, I don't know. It didn't do it for me. But the director of that did go on to direct the newest The Conjuring. So if we want to jump back into those, The Conjuring 2, for whatever reason, I never saw this until this weekend. I just didn't get around to seeing it. I don't know why. I guess I just decided not to see it, but I hadn't seen it until this very weekend. So I was kind of new to it, but
Tell me your thoughts.
um I really liked it. I was like, why did I wait this long to see it? I don't know why I didn't see it right away, but I love that it was like, I love that one, it was clearly James Wan directing it again. And I love that it's like, boom, new location. We're in London now. And it was instant. Like, I don't care that it was like very much in your face. It's like raining. And then they play London Calling. Like I get we're in London, but I loved it. I'm like, fuck yeah, we're in London now. It's a whole different setting. And like, just James Wan's directing is so good. Just the camera work. Like, there's this huge unnecessary crane shot that these actresses are walking. All they're doing is going down the stairs to do laundry, and this crane shot follows them, goes up, around, and then down into the basement. And I'm just like, all unbroken. Like, what a great shot. And you don't need it. They're just doing laundry, similar to the opening sequence of The Conjuring. Like, it's this long, unbroken take of them moving in, and it's great. And it's all over. And it's just like, that kind of stuff is just fun to watch. You're like, look, they put care into this, just.
I have a note, a nerdy film director note about the opening sequence too, because if you notice, they're exactly the same in The Conjuring 1, The Conjuring 2. You have this sort of follow by camera, and for me, when I was watching, especially The Conjuring 2, I was like, oh wait, like I think this is actually like the demon or the presence
Oh
in
yeah.
the POV of, because it's like the same thing. It's like the family's moving in, you're like coming in, you're just kind of going by as
Yeah.
these coming through, and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder if that's what it is, but that was
It
just
was.
sort of my observation. So again, super film nerdy. So
Yeah.
I appreciated it too, because I was like, wow, this is good.
It just shows like he took care. He like thought these shots out. It was like, this will look cool, which is more than you can say for a lot of other movies. But The Conjuring 2 was really good. And I like how they didn't try to just do the same thing. It's not like it's similar, but it's different enough where it's like they weren't just trying to recreate and do the same exact movie again. But yet at the same time, it is like another family and it is a slow burn. Um, but I like how they introduced more of the like skepticism behind the Warrens at the
Right.
time, and how like that would be like, that was a real thing that they had to deal with, and that would be a real thing. And it's also nice for the people that don't believe in this stuff and think the Warrens were full of shit, because then they can watch this and be like, yeah, see, they were full of shit this whole time. They made it all up, So it kind of works on both levels there for me.
Yeah, I agree. This is my favorite of the three films, I think, Conjuring 2.
Hmm.
Uh I like obviously, yeah, we're straight up, we're just in a different location. Uh just the British kids are
Yeah.
spooky.
Yep.
They're just straight up spooky.
Something wrong with them.
I I like, again, I like the there's some good fake outs in both the Conjuring 1 and the Conjuring 2. I think the big fake out in the first one is that you're just expecting the whole time for, it's like, okay, one of these kids is going to get possessed. One of
Yeah.
these kids is going to, and then it turns out being the mother in the end. And I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, that's kind of fun. And with the second one, it's this whole like, the skepticism thing that's building around the case, and then
Yeah.
having sort of this like dream inception thing where it's like a demon within a demon type
Yeah.
deal is really cool. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So
That's a big chance to take too. And it worked, and to have it to have it play with like, you know, like you said, taking the time to set up like, okay, she kind of got in trouble at school, and then like they're in a rough living situation, so maybe she's acting out because of that, and then like maybe the mother's doing this to gain attention and hopefully get out of that housing and go somewhere else, which is like real stuff, you know. And then to find evidence of the girl starting to fake it was cool, but then also to not to play that so well that you don't lose the momentum, and that you're not like, oh well, but then to re-ratchet it back up, like hit the brakes, and then you're like, oh well, but then to pick back up and not lose the momentum and come back and finish it was just a great job, because you could have easily lost people at that point, you know, and it would have been harder to check back in, but they did a great job. The one thing that I thought about while watching this was like there's one part in the first Conjuring and one part in the second Conjuring that like feel like they don't fit to me. I don't really like love it. And that is in the second one, it was like the like the paper man or whatever that like comes alive and is like a big monster,
Yeah.
and just sort of just like jumps out at him like, I'm the paper man now, and has big teeth, and it's like, okay, like that didn't really do it for me. And then like, and that made me think of in the first Conjuring when they're looking, you know, when shit's going down, like you said, and we're kind of everywhere. There's that part in the kitchen, I think, where he walks in and there's the jump scare of the girl being like, look what they made me do, right at the camera with like cuts in her arms. And it was just like you're like, oh, and then that's like it, you know, nothing else. So there was a moment in both where, I don't know, it was sort of like, oh, okay. Like it's just a big jump and it sort of didn't feel like it fit with anything else.
Right. Yeah. So just a mild nitpick there. I would say like
Yeah.
if I'm nitpicking the films, um, you know, these films are essentially like I hold them near and dear to my heart because, you know, these films are very um Catholicism centric. And
Okay.
me being a Catholic, it feels like a lot like this.
What?
It's like voodoo, you know. It's like for
Yeah.
us by us. Like these movies are. I take ownership of the Conjuring movies.
Yeah.
They're these are my movies, and I love them. And so, like you know, Vera Farmiga, she has her rosary on her at all times, and it's very important because you know, obviously, in her line of work, you know, you need that type of
It
thing.
comes up quite a bit. Yeah.
But I will say, of all of the things that you would want after watching, you know, three separate adventures with Ed and Lorraine, I would just say, like at all times, like can we like just carry around like a jackhammer or some sort of like thing that it's like, oh, here's another locked door, you
Yeah.
know,
The
like
jaws of life.
crowbar, like just a guy that stands in that. It's like crowbar time, you know.
Yeah.
I want it. If I had more time, I would go through and
Yeah.
just sort of keep track of how many times like Patrick Wilson is trying to like shoulder open a door. But you could say they're, you know, as good as they are at exercising demons, they might be better at breaking through locked doors because that
Mm,
just comes up a
a
lot.
lot.
So,
Right. And to your point, it would be a lot easier to just have a crowbar, or if you just had like a screwdriver, you could just take the hinges off the door, and then you'd be right in. And yeah, no, that's a great point.
right.
Let's
Yeah.
remake these. Let's call
Again, you
James.
know, we're
Yeah.
nitpicking now.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's the thing, is like these movies are so great. It's like there really isn't much to say, you know. It's just like, yeah, I'm rarely at all ever just like, oh well, that's dumb, or oh, let's get to the next part. Like they all work really well, and build up. So obviously going into this third one, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. I know James Wan wasn't directing it. Um, and I think, yeah, the director of The Curse of La Llorona came back to direct this one, Michael Chavez. Um, and yeah, so what do you think about this third one?
So the third one, again, I'm really excited for it because I love the second one, love the
Yeah.
first one.
It had been a few years.
And yeah, so it's been like almost like, I don't know what, 7 years now, 7, 8 years between, the start of the franchise and now. Uh I just like, I love watching these two just like solve a case. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, like it just never gets old with Vera Farmiga walking into a room and just having that like something evil happened here, Ed. And like it gets me every time. It's just a joy. And I love this film. I really liked it. I thought the opening scene was just dials it up to 11, and it really like just sort of
Mm.
sets the tone for like, okay, here we go, like we're off to the races, we're not even gonna wait
Yeah.
uh to see what happens here. And there's there's maybe like a little bit too much going on. You could trim a little bit of the fat here and there, but I do think that the sequences, they're sort of spread out enough to where you're never really. I never really got bored in this film. I was
Mhm.
always on edge, and I really enjoyed it. I was honestly, I was surprised. I was like, wow, it feels like they did it again.
Yeah. I agree. I was surprised at how much I liked it too, especially with James Wan not coming back to direct it. Um, and yeah, the balls of opening on like right at the climax of an exorcism. Like we get there right toward the end of it when shit's really going down and they have to like they're doing it, and like we getting to that, it's like wow, we've seen this at the that's the climax. That's basically that scene's been the climax of the last couple movies. That's usually the big final thing at the end. And just so to walk in on that gives you kind of a cool feeling of again like oh yeah, one, the Warrens do this all the time. Like this is just like a thing that they do,
But Edward, this one feels different.
but this one feels different. Right. And so I really like how it's cool to play off of like not everything just works out and is tied up in a nice little bow. Like the last two Conjurings, like they were kind of resolved. We assume the family's fine, whatever, we move on. But with this one, it was nice. It was like, well, we did what we could. It seems like it's done. Let's go, because it's not like an exact science. And I like that they took chances with it. It wasn't just another like haunted house, another like there's something here, like let's investigate it, which honestly I would have probably been fine with. You would have sat there, we would have probably watched it. But I like that they took a chance to have this be kind of a different take on possession, and they had a lot of Satanism in it, which Old Legs is a
Oh
huge
yeah.
fan. Was all in on. And I love that too. Just like having a witch basically like curse people and then like sick a demon inside of them to possess certain times, and then having that throw Ed and Lorraine for a loop because obviously they've never seen that before. So they were like, well, we think he's possessed, but yet here he is reading from the Bible, so I guess he's not, but he was a second ago. Like that was super fun.
Yeah. I I totally agree. There's just some like really standout moments from this film. Uh, I thought that all of the scenes, like he almost steals the show, but John Noble as the like retired occultist
Yeah.
priest, like I I think I needed to like check my pulse, like something about just like his line delivery and like this dark spooky ass place that he lives in, and you're thinking the whole time like, okay, this guy's definitely in on it, right?
Yeah.
He's way spooky. You have like the room where it's like, the Lorraine's is just like the instant I don't want to go down there,
Yeah.
and he's like, hell yeah, like let's.
It's like it's the reason you came here. It's what you
Yeah,
want.
it's so awesome. And then obviously the reveal at the end with like it's his daughter, and
Yeah.
it does these interesting parallels too, where it's like, oh, here are Ed and Lorraine who have sort of, they could go down this same path, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and they could produce a a master Satanist.
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome. I thought the witches totems, the idea that it's a curse and you got to break the like, it all worked for me. It was all fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree. And this one, to your point, has a higher body count. There's what,
Yeah,
a
so
couple
it would
deaths
be
in
like
this.
five-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So there you
and
go.
and speaking of real world consequences, like, um, it centers around a murder trial. So like there was a murder, and it wasn't just like, oh, another, dead teenager. It's like, well, now he's in jail, and we have to try and figure out what's going on. So that also worked really well. And it was
Right.
just a fun little thing to have the lawyer when they were like, oh, if you don't believe in it, stop by and we'll introduce you to Annabelle.
Yeah.
And that was a fun little thing too, because as you said, Annabelle, what's the worst she could really do? But it spooked her enough to
Right.
take it.
Sort of
But
a, sort of a big ask from a boyfriend to be like, right? Like, are you there? Are you taking the demon, Luke?
oof, for your girlfriend's little brother, um I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say under no circumstance am I jumping on that bullet.
You know,
Yeah.
I think it's like a hard out for me.
Yeah, like, we had a good run and it was fun and everything, but I'm not. Yeah, you're right. That dude's a simp. He got what he deserved for that, because he simped way too hard. Because it's like one thing to be like, oh, we're buddies and I'm friends with your younger brother, but to do that, it's like, bro, come on. Like, you don't even have a ring on it yet. Like, what do you even?
Right. Right. So, I was thinking a lot about Ed and Lorraine, how I
Okay.
very much enjoy them, and I put together some of my favorite fictional couples.
Ooh, okay.
And so I have one being Jesse and Celine from before. That's
Yeah.
like that's the
It's not even fair how
yeah,
far ahead they are of everybody.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it might be getting close. Ed and Lorraine are two for me.
Okay.
Three, turning back the clock, Sarah and Mr. Big from Sex and the City
Okay.
brings me back. Four, this is a shout out to you, Beatrice and Four from Divergent. You got to get Shailene in there.
Yeah.
Shailene,
Wow. Great.
yeah, great stuff. And then number five, to round out my list, I had Craig and the Octopus from my Octopus teacher.
Wow.
So, yeah.
We really went on a journey there. There's a lot of different different kinds of couples there.
I
That's
have
for
a
sure.
couple honorable mentions, but these are just because it didn't really work out
Okay.
between couples. I have David, and she doesn't have a name. It's just Heartless Woman from The Lobster.
Oh, right.
I think,
Yeah.
in the end, it doesn't work out between them, but I think they had a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And then Aoyama and Asami from Audition. Once again, I think they had chemistry, a couple nice dates, but in the end, it didn't quite work out for either of them for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But there you go. There's my the top five-ish
Wow.
movie couples. I don't know. Did I miss anything?
I'm trying to think. A Honey Bunny and what's his face from Pulp Fiction. Speaking of which, I'm wearing that T-shirt. That's a fun couple. They do a lot of fun stuff together. Do you count Thelma and Louise? Can they count as a couple?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd put them up there. They have a fun road trip and run into Brad Pitt.
Right.
Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, Good Will Hunting. I mean,
100%.
That's
Couple.
power couple.
Hour.
And the town, they throw bottles. They threw bottles at you.
Bottles at you.
I mean, he was very concerned. They had a lot of chemistry there too. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have to save that for a whole episode. What do you think, loyal listeners? break that down.
Started
But
here, honestly.
yeah. But speaking of, all these movies are on HBO Max right now. They're bringing this episode to you. They are our sponsor for today, HBO Max. Home box office maximum. In your living room, you can see the whole Conjuring universe from your couch. And yeah, we love HBO Max. Thanks for letting us pay full price every month to watch all these. So, yeah, but in conclusion, I think this is a really good horror franchise, and they take chances, they go different places, and when you're thinking of just like when I think of like, when you're with a group of people and they're like, all right, we want to watch, let's watch a scary movie, like, let's put one on, like, it's hard to think because you're like, okay, well, we got to pick one out, like, what's going to be a good one? All the Conjurings work, just to throw them on as a group. You can enjoy them together. They're creepy and they're great. You don't have to sit through some fucking bullshit. So that's how I end. So yeah. Anyway, check them out. Let us know what you think about the Conjuring movies. Which one is your favorite? You can find me on Twitter at LukeLarson89. Find this podcast at L Squared Podcast. On Twitter, on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook at L2 Podcast. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube. Anywhere you want to get your podcasts, you'll find us there. So give us a follow. And yeah, let us know what you thought about these movies. Until next time.
Remember that a master Satanist is not an adversary to be taken lightly.
The connection goes both ways.
Yep.